Hello, everyone. I'd like to officially welcome you to today's webinar, Supervisor Circle Focus on Recruitment. I'm Jessica Birch from the Corporation for National and Community Service, and I'll be the host for today's webinar. I'll also be facilitating the live Q&A at the end of the session. I'd like to welcome our session coordinator and main facilitator today as well. Amy Kanata has been engaged in various national service projects at Education Northwest and has been working with VISTA since 2008. For the past 2.5 years, she has been focusing on supporting the work of VISTA supervisors by developing resources for the VISTA campus, designing and delivering webinars, and writing curriculum for the supervisor orientation. Last year, she researched VISTA supervisor recruitment practices and will be talking about some of the findings from that research today. Also joining us today is Andy Clark from Education Northwest, who has helped to prepare today's webinar and will be managing the WebEx technology. You will see Andy in the chat and Q&A to help address questions you may have during the session. I am also pleased to welcome our guest speakers for today. Megan Quigley served as a VISTA with Mission St. Louis from 2013 to 2014 before moving into her current role as a VISTA leader in November of 2014. Mission St. Louis is an umbrella project which places VISTAs in 12 different nonprofits throughout the St. Louis area and currently hosts 40 VISTAs. Tyson Garris has worked at Greater Homewood Community Corporation, soon to be known as Strong City Baltimore, for over 8 years, serving as Director of Partnerships and Business Services. In this role, he has overseen the development of GHCC's VISTA program as a sponsoring organization, serving over 100 VISTA members at 48 unique project sites across Maryland. He also administers the agency's nonprofit business services program, which provides back office support to 85 unique initiatives across Baltimore City. So, by the end of this webinar, we hope that you'll be able to describe recruitment trends and effective strategies for recruitment, to recognize recruitment strategies for a variety of program structures and locations, as well as identify at least one new approach for recruitment. Now, I'd like to turn it over to Amy Kanata. Amy, take it away.
Thank you, Jessica, and welcome everyone. Thanks for being here today. I see that a few of you responded in the chat about what attracted you to your current position supporting communities. Mike says that he really wanted to bring community together and foster a better community. Others of you may want to reflect on that as we go along. The point here is to really just think about what drives people to volunteer or drives people to our different agencies, and this is a theme that we'll be talking about throughout the webinar. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with the official presentation. As I was thinking about this topic, I thought of a good friend and mentor of mine, Craig Bowman, who works with nonprofit organizations all over the world, and he helps them develop fundraising campaigns. And really, a lot of people are not comfortable asking for money. So for every workshop that he does, he starts his workshop with an exercise that gets people excited and tapped into the passion that they have for the work that they do. So without that kind of passion to really help people and tackle poverty, VISTA would not exist. So we're all here today because we're passionate about poverty and passionate about making change in our community. As you all know, the VISTA program serves our highest poverty communities while providing a valuable service opportunity for members. So if we're excited, other people will be excited as well. So as we ask for folks to join our programs, bring a little bit of that passion to your words and your training so that others will be just as excited about this work as you are. So the next few slides, we're going to showcase some of the benefits that alumni have experienced through their service, and this is part of our trends piece of the webinar. So the slides that I'll be showing have been adapted from a toolkit that was created last year to mobilize VISTA alums to be recruitment ambassadors. This toolkit is available on the VISTA campus, and Indy's going to post the link in the chat. I encourage all of you to tell your alums about it to help you with recruitment, and also feel free to download and customize this presentation for use in your own recruitment efforts. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the trends that you can use to sell your program. The first trend, we all know this, members solve problems. So in 2015, 50 million people were living in poverty. That's 15% of our population. 2 out of 10 children live in poverty. There's a great need for folks to serve our community. Members make a difference. So when recruiting VISTA members, explain that VISTA works to eradicate various aspects of poverty like financial insecurity, the education gap, homelessness, not just to make poverty more bearable. Emphasize to your members that VISTA is an intense service experience that tackles the most pressing social needs, and that members will learn valuable skills through an experience of a lifetime. As we know, again, VISTAs grow their skills, and when alumni were surveyed, they told us that 69% of them felt like being a member improved their chances of finding a job, while 84% said they refined their leadership skills, and 93% said they refined their communication skills. And then I think this one's really important. 80% of our VISTA alums continue to volunteer after their service ends. So it really does become part of the fabric of their lives, being volunteers. So again, emphasize how members will grow their skills, how being a member will change them in the positive. And again, your audience may be interested in knowing some of these details as you go out and recruit. So let's take a look at some of the trends that we've learned about from our supervisors. How are supervisors faring in their efforts, and what strategies are most effective? So first we're going to take a look at some of your trends. So when you registered for the webinar, you provided us with some information about your recruitment practices and how things are going for you. We found that most of you, 56%, had moderate success with recruitment, while another 30% of you identified as successful or very successful. A lot of you also said that you were new to VISTA supervision, so many people haven't even had a chance to go through a recruitment cycle yet. But let's take a look at some of the challenges that you all identified when you registered. So I did a quick analysis, not scientific, but a quick analysis of what you told us. And these are the 4 areas that folks said were challenges. So poor candidate quality, candidates backing out, folks not understanding the VISTA program requirements, and also just having a hard time finding candidates with the skills and interests that you're looking for. So these are some of the major trends. I want to give you guys a chance to tell us a little bit more about some of the challenges that maybe we didn't list on this page. So this is a chance for all of you to take a few minutes to tell us what challenges have you experienced that did not appear on our previous list. And you can use the chat panel to do this. So you'll want to, if you don't see the chat panel, you'll want to go in the upper right and click on the little chat icon, and that'll open the chat panel. And then choose to send to all participants and tell us what challenges have you experienced that did not appear on our previous list, or any challenge in general. This is a chance for you to share with your peers. And then in just a minute, we're going to see if maybe folks have some solutions to those challenges.
Thanks, Amy. So as people are, documenting what their challenges have been, let me read out a few that are coming in through the chat so far. So Christina here said that subsites, a challenge for her is subsites not supporting recruitment efforts for the sponsor. We do have a few here about recruiting VISTA leaders. That's a challenge. Also, that VISTA candidates did not fully understand what a VISTA was and what that opportunity was about. Definitely, I'm not sure what it's about. That can definitely cause some barriers to recruitment. Also, that there's a small general pool of candidates regardless of skills or interest, so not enough interest. This is another big one, is recruiting for positions in rural sites. That can definitely be more challenging than if you're recruiting in a bigger city. And this is another one. People are applying for the position, but they're doing that through Indeed and other venues. They then email them and ask them to apply through AmeriCorps, but sometimes seems to get lost in translation and they don't apply through the AmeriCorps system. So yeah, that can definitely cause some challenges. Let's see here. So just the volume of applications can be a challenge. Also, no housing that's available for VISTAs in rural areas. That can definitely be another challenge. Also, Linda here says that recruiting during certain time periods, less candidates after graduation season and summer. That's definitely another challenge. And yeah, also let's go with this last one here, that recruiting VISTAs that reflect the communities they'll be serving. So those are a lot of, I don't want to say great challenges, but those are some challenges that we know have been echoed. So, so Amy, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Jessica. It's not an easy job to summarize those chats as they're coming in fast and furious, but it sounds like there's a lot of energy around this, and I know this is why folks are here today, is to look at both challenges and strategies to improve recruitment efforts. So as you can all scroll through the chat by using the little bar on the right-hand side. Did you see a challenge that you've overcome in your program? If you did, take a couple minutes to maybe share a solution in the chat panel. Something that maybe, oh yeah, we had that issue and we took care of it in this way. So I know one of the challenges that I saw coming through was that they have a hard time recruiting members that reflect their community. And a little bit later in the session, Tyson is going to talk about a strategy that they've used to support local applicants to apply for their VISTA positions. Okay, so the chat is open to you all as we go through the session, so feel free to use it to talk back and forth, and we encourage you to share ideas with others. Someone here says solutions to applicants not knowing about what a VISTA is. Have the VISTA leaders do a first round of interviews and explain VISTA. Also, if you don't have VISTA leaders, you can also send out on YouTube, there's some great videos that talk about what VISTA does, and that's a nice visual way to share information about VISTA. So again, feel free to just continue to share those solutions in the chat panel, and we're going to go ahead and move on. There'll be more opportunities as we go through for all of you to share your ideas, so thank you for submitting those. All right, Indy, let's go ahead and move on. So let's look at some more trends, and then we'll move on to solutions. Until about, I guess late last year, little was really known about recruitment practices that yield high-quality VISTA candidates. So in the fall of 2013, the AmeriCorps VISTA recruitment team at the Corporation for National and Community Service partnered with our organization, Education Northwest, to learn more about VISTA recruitment practices through VISTA supervisors. The team developed a survey that was sent to 1,800 VISTA supervisors in all 50 states, as well as Puerto Rico. We received 434 responses, about 24% response rate, which is just 4% above the standard. And this is what we found from that survey. I think you'll find it interesting. We found that 70% of the supervisors who took the survey said that they were either somewhat or very successful with their VISTA recruitment. Now, I want everyone to sort of take that with a grain of salt if you know about survey research. It's possible that mostly successful recruiters responded to our survey, but even if that's true, even our successful recruiters had challenges. So let's take a look at some of those challenges that they identified in the survey. And many of these are more programmatic focused. They also had similar challenges as the ones that you all put in both your survey and in the chat panel. So these are some of the challenges maybe that didn't come up in our survey that I wanted to share with you. So they listed living allowance rates and benefits as a challenge. They also talked a little bit about the time it takes for the corporation state offices to approve their postings in MyAmeriCorps, because of course those can't go live until they're approved. They also talked about the inability to supplement income through part-time employment for VISTA members. And so these were some of the big challenges. However, I want us to think about these in maybe a little different way. So let me provide a little bit of food for thought for these three challenges. So the first one is living allowance rates are minimal. Well, let's think about this in a different way. This was recently brought to our attention at PSO by some members who said, you know, actually these rates are higher than any wage I've ever received. So even though for many of our members these may be low rates, this is low pay, for others this may be the best pay that they've ever received. So let's think about that, maybe be inclusive of all the different types of people that may apply for our program. You never know where you'll find your next member, as we'll see later. And for some people it's a pay cut, and for others it's a pay increase. Sort of related to the benefits, one thing to think about is the VISTA candidates will look to you as the face of the VISTA program. You'll be their main contact, and so they'll have lots of questions for you about benefits. It's okay if you don't know the answer. Feel free to send applicants, you don't have to be a member, to the VISTA Member Support Unit or the VMSU. If they have detailed questions that you can't answer about health care or other benefits, the VMSU is the best place to send them, and they can get all their questions answered there. As you know, lack of information frustrates everybody, including our applicants. So just try to give them as much information as you can throughout the process, whether that's providing a fact sheet about VISTA benefits, which we have some to share, or pointing them to the VISTA campus where they can take a look at the resources and webinars that provide detailed information about benefits. Okay, so for the next one, the time it takes the corporation state offices to approve postings in MyAmeriCorps. So we want you to remember that the state office really is invested in your success. They want to get members recruited and placed just as much as you do. So build in time for both the approval process as well as follow-up with your state office. And it's totally okay if you have not heard back from them to send them a gentle reminder. They have lots of folks that they're working with, and it's totally okay to remind them if you're waiting for something. And then the last one, the inability to supplement income through part-time employment. The great news is, if you haven't heard, VISTA members are now allowed to have outside employment, but we do want to just give you a few key policy items that you should know. So first of all, outside employment must not conflict with the project service or service hours, nor can it conflict with any applicable law or VISTA program requirements or policies. Members are not, under no circumstances, able to be employees or contractors for the sponsor or the project which they're serving, so they can't be a member but also be hired on in some other role at your project. And then, of course, you as the supervisor must agree that the outside work will not interfere with the VISTA project, and if the work does interfere, the VISTA may be asked to either end employment or end VISTA service. So that's a quick overview of the new employment policy, and more information is available online. Okay, so let's take a look at what else we learned from the survey. One of our big trends is that timing matters. So we found that successful recruiters spent between 9 and 16 weeks on recruitment, and that some of our unsuccessful recruiters were more likely to recruit in the summer. So we know that the summer is really the busiest time to bring on new VISTAs. So again, if you need to recruit for summer, start working on your recruitment and outreach probably about 4 months ahead of time to include all your planning and everything that you'll need to do. And a good way to generate that timeline is to use your desired PSO date, which is the date that the members will go to training, and work backwards. Last year, we had a group of VISTA leaders create an awesome recruitment planning calendar where you can just type in your pre-service orientation date and it will generate a timeline for you. And this is available on the VISTA campus. The URL's right there, and Indy just put it into the chat as well. And we'll also post these links along with the recording. But it's a great way to generate your timeline without having to sit and, really like spend a bunch of time with a calendar. We also found that those who were successful with recruitment got the word out, and how they did that really mattered. So the tried and true word of mouth is still the most popular and one of the best ways to get the word out about your open position. Folks also said that they used Twitter, Craigslist, and Idealist. Our successful recruiters use those quite often. And then also many of you said that you were using Twitter, Craigslist, Idealist, and other electronic media to get the word out, depending on what folks are used to seeing in your community. Notice too here that the successful recruiters presented at events where people were already volunteering, so at service projects and other volunteer fairs, so that they're really capturing an audience that already shows an ethic of service and may already be familiar with the VISTA program. Another trend that we're seeing from supervisors relates to completing applications and the process in the MyAmericorps portal. We know that there are a lot of important touch points and actually places where folks have to go in and click accept, and we've seen some challenges with that. So I'd like to introduce Tyson Garris, who's one of our guest speakers today, and Tyson noticed this trend with his programs. So I'm going to turn it over to Tyson so he can tell you a little bit more about supporting folks with the application. Take it away, Tyson.
Thanks so much, Amy. Hi, everybody. My name is Tyson Garris, and I'm the Director of Partnerships and Business Services at Strong City, Baltimore. Our name change is actually official. We've been known as Greater Homewood Community Corporation for the last 46 years. I have been the VISTA supervisor here for the last 8 years, and I would have never thought that this new information could have occurred to me this way, but I had a really interesting experience that I want to share with you. I think on some level, most of us as VISTA supervisors or recruiters are conscious about how automated, how computerized the VISTA recruitment process is. And I think we also realize in our right minds that not every household in the country actually has a computer. But up until this summer, when my agency ran a really specific summer associate program, I had never connected the dots about how those two facts connected to create a barrier to service for many low-income individuals. On the slide here, you can see that candidates must interact with a desktop computer at least 6 times creating their application until officially joining the AmeriCorps VISTA program. This does not work on a smartphone. They need a desktop computer. These 6 points are developing the portal application, applying to a listing, receiving a follow-up from an interested site, which, let's be honest, usually happens via email, accepting a position in the portal once it's offered, completing the terms and benefits paperwork, and completing PSO registration forms. Now keep in mind, this is a minimum amount of computer interactions. The number would go up if there are criminal background items to submit, if the candidate has applied to multiple sites, and so on and so forth. The process for applying to VISTA takes for granted that all applicants will have access to a desktop computer and will have the requisite time and computer literacy to complete the application process. In Baltimore City, where my project is based, and I'm sure across the country, many households, particularly low-income households, just do not have a desktop computer. More and more people are using smartphones, or maybe they were never technology adopters. And even if a dedicated individual is going to the library each week to check their email and handle their own online business, they aren't likely to be doing so with the frequency and immediacy that a VISTA recruitment timeline would require of them. VISTA isn't a computer literacy or a computer access program, though. It's a program focused on eradicating poverty. So once we become aware of how these barriers to recruitment and to enrollment impact members of the low-income community, I think we need to address them. So how can we take this knowledge to recruit more equitably? We would like to suggest that we take a few minutes to reflect on this in the chat.
Thanks, Tyson. So I think Tyson just challenged all of us to think about how we can recruit more equitably, whether that's through supporting people with the actual physical computer process, or what else might we be able to do to really expand our recruitment to the communities that we want to serve so that those folks are reflecting our clients. So take a few minutes to enter some ideas into the chat panel for us. I know one thing that we talked about last year in our recruitment webinar series is thinking beyond just the recent college graduates as your pool of potential applicants. There are folks in your community that bring a lot to the table. I see Donna saying that they provide support through their Vista Leader helps people. There's a theme about folks that don't have computer access. And again, I think this also ties in a little bit with the discussion that we had earlier, or at least the points I made about the state office. So there are a lot of buttons that have to be pushed in MyAmeriCorps for everybody, the state office, for you guys, for members. So if you're waiting on something, it might be worth just picking up the phone or sending out an email to whoever you're waiting for, whether that's your state office or applicant. Jessica, any other trends you're seeing in the chat?
Yeah, so people here, like as you mentioned, going through their Vista Leader. Someone also suggested using community contacts via business or other nonprofits to share the opportunity, maybe possibly with flyers or postcards. Also working with community centers to set up support. So generally, you know, community centers or those sorts of places have, you know, maybe a bulletin board where you can post opportunities. That's definitely a way to get a different population or a different group of people who may not go through the AmeriCorps system to find a position, but who may be interested in those types of positions. Also, someone here mentioned that applicants still find it hard to go through the MyAmeriCorps system. That is definitely a challenge. We know that the MyAmeriCorps system is not the most user-friendly. Education Northwest and the VISTA program in partnership earlier this year did develop on the VISTA campus a tutorial on how to apply to a VISTA position and the step-by-step process. Yes, you would need a computer to go through this, but that is something that's a barrier that hopefully that can help overcome or help ease the burden of that. But there are some great points here, the different ways without a computer that they can engage candidates with recruitment.
Great, thanks, Jessica. And we'll be sure, I don't have that link to the how to apply through MyAmeriCorps with us right now, but I will post that with the recording of this session so that folks can use that as a tool to support the application process. Great, thanks everyone for participating. I see you're interacting in the chat, we love that. So I want to thank Tyson for setting up a great segue for us into our next chapter of the presentation, which focuses on effective strategies. So we'll hear a little bit more from Tyson and also Megan, our other guest speaker, in just a few minutes. But first, let's review just some of the effective strategies that you shared with us when you registered. So we asked you about your effective strategies and themes aligned, again, with the national survey from supervisors across the country. And here are some of the effective strategies that came up. Again, I did a quick summary. Again, you guys are using word of mouth. That time and again is one of the best ways to get the word out through your networks. People are doing mini information sessions where they're also doing sort of a pre-screening interview if they have folks that are in town that are applying. Again, this is always a theme, outreach through colleges and universities, and then of course electronic media, and we'll talk a little bit more about some things you can do with Twitter and LinkedIn towards the end of the presentation. A lot of folks are really looking to their in-house volunteers or people that have already been connected to their program to move up into VISTA positions. Pre-screening is a big theme, so, you know, really like talking with folks about the living allowance, the benefits, the commitment up front so that they know right away whether or not that person is going to be a good fit. And then being very detailed with the VADs and the position descriptions, because that's what folks will see when they learn about your program through MyAmeriCorps. Those position descriptions are really important. So these are just a few highlights. I know there were other things that you guys brought up. What I'm going to do is I am going to use the information that you gave us in registration, and I will post a summary of all the effective strategies along with the recording for the session. We'll have that up probably in about a week. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on and hear from some of our other program staff. I want to go ahead and transition to Megan Quigley. She's with Mission St. Louis, and she's going to share some of their recruitment strategies that they found effective. Take it away, Megan.
Thank you. So like you said, I am Megan. I am a VISTA leader serving in St. Louis with the organization called Mission St. Louis. We are the leader in an umbrella project, which means that we place VISTAs at about 20 different nonprofits throughout the St. Louis area. We just onboarded 35 new VISTAs last week. So we're just kind of wrapping up our recruitment for the year, and I kind of wanted to share some of the things that we have found that work best for us, especially with placing VISTAs not only at our own agency but outside of our agency that are still associated with our project. So we found that many of our agencies do have longtime volunteers, and some of those volunteers are already serving nearly 40 hours a week. So the VISTA program has been a great opportunity to approach those volunteers and actually be able to compensate them in some way for the time that they're already giving to the agency. This can be a really helpful way to start, especially because those volunteers are already existing supporters of your work and are already familiar with your mission, your goals, and are already passionate about the same population and projects that you are, so onboarding them as a VISTA employee is a really smooth transition. We also have used, some of our agencies use their VISTA positions to employ people that have been through their program. So we have a couple different employment programs or job readiness programs in our umbrella, working with young men or young women that haven't necessarily had that work experience before. And so we're able to take some of those really promising graduates and place them in the VISTA position and give them a real solid year of work experience that they may not have had before. We also use our posts at local universities. We have a couple partnerships with universities in St. Louis. St. Louis University actually hosts VISTAs, so they're able to get the word out for us, because one of the strongest challenges that we've found with the VISTA program is we really need to build that name recognition. So when you approach students, they don't always know what VISTA is, they don't always know what AmeriCorps is, and then when you have that presence on campus, you're kind of able to spread your name out a little bit more and kind of get the students more interested and involved that way. We've also used our partnerships to hire on students, so we have interns and practicum students come through our agency, and then sometimes they're able to recruit them to the VISTA year once they're done with their degree. Especially with our summer associate program this summer, we use that as a way to onboard people that were looking for things to do over the summer and actually get paid for something very similar to what they were doing before. Interviewing is something that's also really important for us at Mission St. Louis. We have a grading, like a gauge commitment strategy. You can see that on the slide. This is what I use as a VISTA leader. I also do all of the pre-screening interviews, so we'll always do a 30-minute phone interview with me before I pass it along to a supervisor at the site. And this way I'll give them a good score or a good feel for what the candidate has in their experience. We use a standardized interview questions for all of our VISTA applicants. These questions are designed specifically to gauge their commitment to service, because we always want to stress that VISTA isn't a job. It's a year of volunteer work. If you're looking for a high-paying position and that's your biggest motivation, then VISTA probably isn't the best fit for you. So we want to learn about their professionalism, but we also want to focus on their service background and ask about their experience with populations and projects, just kind of get a feel for what they're passionate about and see how that will fit with the agency and what we work on here. By emphasizing the service and being upfront about the limited income, we have found that we lose fewer members further down the line. If you're very clear with them about the stipend up front so that they're aware and can start to plan for how to handle that for a year, then you'll find that you'll have less fall by the wayside throughout their year. And so this survey, or this grid, just kind of ranks their work environment, drive for excellence, job experience, willingness to learn, and courageous conversation. We found that those last two components are usually really important because the member is only going to be with you for 1 year, and so you need to gauge whether or not they're going to be able to pick things up quickly and also aren't afraid to ask questions when they need to, because that way you don't lose time with the VISTA. On my last slide, I have eGrants is one way that we've used to search for VISTAs in the database. We always use the search potential applicants, which I think might be an underutilized but great tool when looking for future members. We were able to use this especially for our summer associate recruitment this summer because we were able to search for local applicants because we weren't able to offer relocation benefits. So we were looking for someone who was already in town and available, and by using this tool, it'll filter out anyone that doesn't meet those criteria. This database will only yield available applications, so anyone that is marked as in service will not come up in your search. And it'll also spit back things only based on the skills you have selected. But it's important to note that this search will not give you full access to their profile application. You'll only have a brief overview of what their skills are and their availability dates and their email. So you are then able to email them directly. We usually provide them with the VAD or the position description when we do so. And invite them to apply for the position through eGrants, and that is how you'll gain access to their full application as well as their references. We do recommend that people are patient. This is very successful for us, and we've gotten most of our VISTAs through this search, but it can be very time-consuming, so just give yourself some time to filter through those emailing those applicants, because you will run into some members that maybe have filled out the application, marked themselves as available, but forgot to take it down when they entered service or things like that. But we found that this is really helpful because you're finding those people that are already dedicated to service. They already have an idea of what the VISTA program is, and they're just looking to get involved, and they need to find that right opportunity for them. So I hope that some of these tips are helpful to you all, and I'm going to hand it back to Jessica.
Thanks, Megan, and thank you for providing more details about what you guys do at your project. Sounds like a great strategy, and we're also going to talk here about Katie. We have a supervisor by the name of Katie Schaefer who's with Vermont Youth Tomorrow. She was unable to join us for this webinar, but she was able to provide us some of the strategies that she has found to be effective. So Katie is the Director of National Service Programs at the Vermont Youth Tomorrow AmeriCorps VISTA project. We asked her what her successes have been and what strategies she uses for effective recruitment. She said the first strategy that she mentioned was making sure that the candidate was the right fit for their program. And to do that, they spend a lot of time with an applicant before offering a position. Katie explained that service sites conduct 2 interviews with the applicant and contacts their references. If they're interested in them after that point, a 3rd interview is then conducted with Katie to ensure that the person understands AmeriCorps VISTA and the program requirements. She then consults with the service site to determine if the person is a good fit, and then they make the offer of the position, and then they help the candidate through the enrollment process. So definitely taking their time with the candidate, making sure that they understand all of what the VISTA program entails, as well as what to expect. Katie also mentioned another effective strategy is to outline the benefits of service. So she detailed a few things here. So with regards to professional development training plan, Katie said that her program has been fortunate to have developed a strong professional development program for members. They bring together members from across the state each month for training, reflection, and discussion. This training ensures that members develop skills for service and beyond. And some of the topics that they discuss are grant writing, resource development, leadership styles, work style preferences, conflict resolution, rural poverty, creating a professional network, and working with traditional and social media, as well as resume and development and interviewing skills. So that is a high priority for her projects. It's also an opportunity to develop skills. So in addition to the capacity building activities of the VAD, they include program requirements that are designed to give members real-world experiences, such as a detailed weekly time report connecting activities to the VAD focus areas, or a very comprehensive reporting process so that members can link their service to the program's outputs and outcomes. Also, housing assistance. They connect incoming members with current members for help locating affordable housing, and they also provide incoming members with links to apartment listings. My role with VISTA is as a training coordinator, so I go to PSOs often, and one of the biggest things that we hear at PSO is, I don't know where I'm going to live, I don't know where I'm going to, where to go, or any of those sorts of things. So even just connecting them with current members, former members, links to affordable housing, just notifying them, hey, this is a good area, stay away from this area, that can go a long way with VISTA's entering service, especially if you're having candidates who have relocated for service. Katie also goes over local benefits. So they provide incoming members with a list of local benefits and community amenities. This can definitely help VISTAs get acclimated to their communities, especially if they relocated quicker than if they didn't have those resources. And she also provides ongoing support. They require that on-site supervisors provide at least 1 hour weekly supervision with members. They check in with members regularly through email, telephone, and site visits. And as mentioned, they bring the team together each month for training, reflection, and discussion. The staff review time reports as they are received and offer feedback to members on their comprehensive reports. Ensure that what is reported is accurate and supported by documentation. She also makes sure that the staff is always available to answer questions and provide any support necessary. Katie said that she's very proud of her staff and their dedication to ensuring that members receive the support that they need while in service. And she also mentioned that her program contracts with an employee assistance plan, which provides free confidential assistance for their members. So these services include, mental health counseling, workplace conflict resolution, legal assistance, and so forth. So as Amy mentioned earlier, outlining the benefits of VISTA and what's expected is really key. You are, as a supervisor, really are the face that these members see as the face of VISTA. So making sure they have this information sooner rather than later goes a long way. So now I'm going to turn it over to Tyson, who's going to go over another effective strategy that he's found. So Tyson?
Thanks, Jessica. So I have a few slides to share with you. The first, I want to reinforce what my colleagues are saying about recruiting both for the VISTA position as well as for the goal of the project. In recruiting VISTA members over the last 8 years, I've been surprised how frequently sites, VISTA leaders, project partners take for granted that someone's application to VISTA means that the candidate thinks that it means the candidate is familiar with what it means to be a VISTA. They don't a lot of the time. They may think they're applying for a job, for an internship. They might not even remember applying if they're in one of those phases of their lives. Your recruitment team can be too focused on finding someone with the right skill set for the position and can forget to screen for the candidate's alignment with the VISTA program. But generally, in my experience, alignment with the VISTA program, the low-income stipend, the 365 days of service, the indirect service requirement, these are bigger causes for challenges during the year, especially the kinds of challenges that would result in early termination, than any kind of assessment about an alignment with the project focus. One thing I'd like to suggest is that your word choice matters. I would suggest that you as a supervisor or your selection team, I just did it here, don't use words that are associated with traditional or conventional employment, words like hire, work, or wage. Remember that this is a stipended volunteer program, and so I would suggest replacing those words with things like select instead of hire, serve instead of work, and stipend instead of wage. This supports a more appropriate kind of thinking about who a VISTA member would ideally be. Our agency, to this end, uses a two-tiered VISTA recruitment strategy. We first screen applicants for their alignment with the values of VISTA, which I've mentioned, and to make sure that the candidate can be a successful VISTA. Once they've cleared that minimum bar, we pass them along to individual site supervisors who can screen the candidates for their skills in working towards the ultimate project goal. On the next slide, I'd like to talk to you about consistency and professionalism. And some of this may help to address concerns that I was seeing in chat about 2 interviews being too long or potentially losing candidates. So in my mind, VISTA recruitment is an opportunity to demonstrate respect and professionalism to the candidates who are considering entering service. GHCC believes that each interaction with a prospective VISTA member is an opportunity to help develop them as an emerging nonprofit and community leader, whether or not they enter service with our program. We use a series of professionalism benchmarks to help maintain a high standard during our recruitment cycle. We actually include these in our strategic plan because we believe they are so important. So these benchmarks include a 2-day turnaround on all new applications to our program. A candidate should receive an email or a telephone response from one of our recruiters within 2 business days of submitting their initial application. They should receive a follow-up contact once they've received a phone screen. Anybody who we get on the phone, unless we reject them outright for some reason, we consider it our responsibility to follow up with them and let them know where they are in our process. We never want to leave anyone hanging without an understanding of where their application stands. And if they're interested in the project and they are presented with the opportunity to accept another project or wait for our second interview, that follow-up conversation can be really helpful for them in making that decision. Even if a candidate is not selected, where appropriate, we offer advice and guidance for their future consideration. This may include things like recommended revisions to their portal application or suggestions for how they could improve their phone interview skills. My organization has received feedback from many candidates that by taking steps like this, we set ourselves apart from other recruiting agencies. In doing so, we increase the likelihood that candidates will accept one of our positions if they are offered one. In selecting candidates, we all know how long it can take to advance through the portal from the applied status through to the selected, pending state office approval, approved, and finally in-service status. Especially if your VISTA member is recruited early, candidates can get really nervous waiting for that process to be completed, and occasionally they may even back out of their service commitment due to this lack of certainty. To help address this, we sometimes send selection letters to our candidates, which give them confirmation of the position in writing. This seems to work well at helping to keep the candidates engaged while the online process catches up. I provided an example of a selection letter to the facilitators of this session, and I understand that it will be made available as a resource to you after the session is over. Finally, I think it's important to keep candidates engaged in addition to sending a selection letter. I know it feels like a huge relief to have selected your VISTA member by the PSO deadline, but remember that at a minimum, 6 weeks will pass between the time your member has been selected and when they enter service. How can you keep them engaged and excited about your project so that they can hit the ground running at the time of their start date? Our site tries to prioritize as much as possible sending welcome emails, providing project or site status updates, providing an opportunity for incoming members to raise questions or concerns, particularly about PSO travel, relocation, preparing to live on the VISTA stipend, etc., and responding to any questions the members have as a high priority and in a timely manner. It's also a good idea to connect your incoming member with other VISTAs who will be serving at your organization or in your partner networks, with other key agency staff, and with constituents who have a vested interest in the program. I recommend that you not wait until the VISTA enters service to start building your VISTA member into your project team. Now I'll turn it over back to Amy.
Thank you, Tyson, and thank you, Megan, and also Katie, who submitted information from Vermont Youth Tomorrow. We really appreciate everyone providing strategies and ideas, and I hope that folks have picked up something new along the way. So I wanted to give you all a chance to share any strategies that maybe you haven't put in the chat panel or that you want to emphasize with your peers. You can do that via the chat panel. Just be sure to send to all participants. Or if you would like to verbally share something, if you're on the phone line, then you can do that as well. And operator, Ms. Kathy, can you tell us how to share ideas via the phone?
Sure. At this time, if you have an idea you want to share on the phone, you may press *1. Please remember to unmute your phone and record your first and last name clearly when prompted. One moment, please, as we wait for our first question.
Thanks, Kathy. And I see, there's been a lot of ideas in the chat panel. I will go through and glean some of those ideas for you and post those with the recording. There was a really good question from Valerie who asked, most of our applicants say that email is their preferable mode of communication, yet we don't hear back from them. How much time should we wait? And I thought Georgianne's suggestion of give them at least a week, if applicable, and then give them a call. I was going to say the same thing. If I'm waiting on something important, I will give them a week, and then I will start bugging them. So I think that's a good rule. Operator, do we have anyone on the phone that would like to share?
At this time, there's nothing in the phone queue. Once again, if you have something to share via the phone, please press *1 and record your name.
Jessica, are we seeing any trends in the chat that we want to highlight?
Yeah, so we're not seeing much come in right now. I know this is, we've gone over a lot of information, and we've gone over a lot of different strategies. We definitely have some questions coming in, so we'll definitely get to those here in the next few minutes. One thing I did want to piggyback off of as we were talking about Valerie's question, we did have Laura respond. I thought she had a great suggestion. She said, before we consider an application complete, we require a resume and a cover letter. She said that this helps weed out the non-responsive applicants and people who don't know what positions they apply to. I think this is a really smart idea. People can go into the My AmeriCorps system and just click buttons. It's very simple once they complete their application to just apply to multiple things. So I think making that extra step for them, you need to send me an application, after you contact them, it really shows who's really interested and who's just applying to anything they see. So I think that's a great suggestion, Laura. So I think, as we'll have some people kind of take some time to think what other strategies that they found successful, and then we'll get to the Q&A. So Amy, I'm going to turn it back over to you to go over some next steps. And then once we get to the Q&A, we can definitely bring up some of these questions that people have.
Great, thanks, Jessica. So we've talked about a lot of different challenges and strategies. So let's take a look at a few things that you can try right away. So the first one relates to mentioning your position. When you do so on Twitter, be sure to mention @VistaBuzz in your tweets so that your open positions go to a larger audience. Also, if you're using Idealist, make sure that you provide links to the National VISTA site, the CNCS site, so that applicants can go and learn more about the VISTA program and CNCS. Don't forget to revise your postings to align with the new employment policy. So I know many of us have that listed, and so be sure to go in and revise those now that outside employment is allowable. And this word of mouth thing, talk to at least 3 people about your open positions and get the word out. And then lastly, feature VISTA in both your newsletter, if you have a paper newsletter, or on your website, or both, to really bring the opportunity to life. And also, applicants are going to go look at your website, so you do want to make VISTA a prominent part of your website as well. So those are some things you can try right away. And before we move into Q&A, I just want to leave you with a few final reasons to join VISTA that came out of our alumni toolkit. Serve your community, build career skills, and have an adventure. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Jessica, and we'll facilitate some Q&A. Take it away, Jessica.
Thanks, Amy, and thanks, everyone. So before we get to the Q&A, we want to know what you thought about this webinar. So on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll find a quick poll where you can share feedback about this webinar. Please take a moment to answer the questions. We do look at these after every webinar. We do this to ensure that we can improve these and also know what questions are still lingering for you. So we do appreciate that time that you take to fill out that evaluation to let us know what future webinars you'd like to see and what you liked about this and what you got out of it. So as you go ahead and do that, we're going to open up the Q&A. So as Amy mentioned, we've given you a lot to think about, and now it is time for your questions. So you can ask questions using the Q&A panel located in the right of your screen. And I'll also now ask the operator to go over one more time how to ask questions by the phone. So operator, can you just go over that one more time?
Yes. At this time, if you would like to ask a question or make a comment, please press *1. Remember to unmute your phone and record your first and last name clearly when prompted.
Great, thank you. So we did have some questions come in. This is going to be directed to Megan, because Megan, you discussed this a little bit. One of the participants had a question about your grid that you did, about courageous conversation. How can you, how do you gauge that during the interview? What is your strategy for being able to gauge that?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. We gauge that by just asking some specific interview questions. So the idea or the goal behind that is to determine if someone has a conflict with a coworker or has a conflict with a client that comes in, how are they going to deal with that and how are they going to process that conflict? Ideally, we want someone who is willing to have a conversation with that person and address issues as they come up rather than have the, oh, I'm just going to keep my head down and ignore this person mentality. We want someone that's going to be willing to work on that relationship and then just kind of go at it with a healthy attitude rather than kind of an avoidant one.
Great, thanks, Megan. That's a great thing. I mean, especially to know that up front. Definitely getting those kinds of questions out, I think, are very helpful and things that maybe some people wouldn't think to ask that far, or that early in the recruitment game. So that's a great task or a great activity that you do there. So, operator, do we have anybody on the phone?
At this time, there's nothing in the phone queue.
Okay, great. So let's go through. We did have a question, and I'll post it to the main chat. So, so someone asked when we talked about outside employment, are there any criteria on the types of jobs this can have? For example, what if a Vista wants to work part-time at a bar? So, so as Amy mentioned, someone's Vista position has to take precedent. You as a supervisor have to approve their outside employment, and they cannot be employed by you, the sponsor of the project. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to post a link to the chat that talks about the outside employment. It can be found on the Vista campus, but what it has the FAQs for the outside employment policy, as well as what the steps are in order for a member to apply for outside employment, and what that process is. This is our 50th year at Vista. We've been here since 1965, and just this year in May, we have lifted the restriction on outside employment. So it is still something that we're working through, and it's something, if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to your state office. If there's something in those FAQs that are not answered in there, your state office is a great resource. A question just came in as I was speaking that someone said, you keep talking about the Vista campus, but what is the Vista campus? So the Vista campus is a site that is utilized by both Vista candidates, applicants, Vista members, alumni, Vista leaders, and supervisors. It is the go-to place to find information about Vista. So things such as the Vista member handbook, the benefits of Vista, your responsibilities as a Vista supervisor. Amy just posted the link in the chat, so definitely take a look at the Vista campus if you haven't already. It's a great resource, and a lot of times your questions can be answered through there, and if not, it definitely directs you on where to ask those questions. So let's go back to the phones and see if anybody's had any questions over the phone. So operator, do we have anybody on the phone?
No, not at this time.
Okay, great. All right, so let me just look here and see if we have some other questions. So I know there was a lot of questions, and I'm gonna ask Tyson this, and I'll also ask Megan, because Megan is currently serving as a VISTA leader. So a lot of questions came in about recruiting VISTA leaders. So we talked a lot about recruitment just for VISTAs, and a lot of those things can translate into recruitment for VISTA leaders as well. Tyson or Megan, well, Tyson, for you as a project supervisor, is there anything that you do differently if you try to recruit a VISTA leader, or anything that you would do? And Megan, you as a VISTA leader, you know, how did you get recruited for that? What really drew you to that position? So I'll turn it to Tyson, and then I'll turn it to Megan.
Sure. Okay. So I honestly think we could do a whole hour on VISTA leader recruitment, because it is a totally different animal, and I completely sympathize with those in the chat who are expressing concern or frustration with that process. One thing that I do, which probably seems obvious, but in the portal application, candidates have an opportunity to update their application content to indicate that they have already served as a VISTA member. If they don't have that filled out fully to indicate that they've already served a year of VISTA, it's under the demographics section. I don't move them forward in the process at all. I encourage them to go back in and update the listing to show that they've served as a year of VISTA, or I say if you can't meet that minimum requirement, then you don't meet the qualifications to be a VISTA leader. The other sort of quick tip that I would give is we value the VISTA leader experience in the sort of same philosophical way that I talked about with the VISTA members, the opportunity to develop an emerging nonprofit and community leaders. But our opportunity to work with the VISTA leader on that piece is much more individualized. And so we try to infuse the position listing that we put out in the portal and circulate among our other recruitment avenues with a sense that, you know, by serving as a VISTA leader with our organization, you'll have an opportunity to get really individualized mentorship and one-on-one support in addition to filling the role of the VISTA leader. I think that kind of value-added thinking has been a benefit in terms of getting a good number of applications to consider and securing high-quality individuals into the role.
That's great. Thank you, Tyson. Yes, VISTA leaders are a whole other different animal, so we appreciate those few little tidbits there. And Megan, you as a current VISTA leader, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, the reason I was recruited as a VISTA leader is because it's with the project that I had served at. So we usually, as an umbrella, will have over 60 people as this has come through our project in a year. So we do have a pretty expansive network of people that we're familiar with. And so we'll have a gauge of anyone that's willing or interested in doing a second year of service. And it's usually a pretty easy transition from being a VISTA into being a VISTA leader. You get the same in-service benefits, you get the same education award, but you actually get a little bit of a pay increase as far as your living stipend goes. So we just kind of approach people that were very successful in their year, always try to make them feel appreciated and understand why you would want to keep them around for another year and have them re-enlist as a leadership position within our project.
That's great. Thank you so much, Megan, and thank you, Tyson. Those are both great different perspectives on the VISTA leaders, and we know that there's a ton more questions about recruitment in general, as well as with VISTA leaders. We are over time at this point, and I definitely know that you are all busy supervisors, and we want to respect your time. So what we're going to do is we're going to end here, but what I would like to do is just thank you for your participation, and if you have further questions or if you need more information, please contact us at vistawebinars@cns.gov. It is an email that is monitored. We will get your question and we will answer it. So if you do have questions that were not answered here or things that come up later, please email us and we will be happy to follow up. Our next webinar that we will be doing is eGrants for supervisors. So that'll be September 15th, 2015 at 2 p.m. Eastern. So keep an eye out for that registration link, and we hope you can join us for that webinar. And thank you all again, and have a great rest of your day.